So my background's kind of similar, you know. I did massage on people and I liked it when I was, young, and I never thought about it as a profession. How I got into it in a profession was through doing yoga. And I did yoga, and then I ended up at a massage, I ended up doing yoga in college, and then I came to Seattle because there was a famous yoga teacher there. This is like in the 1980s. And he had these kinds of anatomy posters like this, but they were like 30 feet tall. He was a kinesiology student at the UW. So it was this really cool old yoga center, and so there were these things like twice the size, and I'd never seen anything like that, and I didn't even really know it made sense outside of medical school. And so there were all these dancers there and massage therapists, and I just didn't know it was a thing really that you could do. So I got interested and I went to massage school, and I have a master's degree in psychology too. And I taught yoga for a long time. And anyway, so touch is certainly a way to communicate. And it's fun intellectually, I think, because you can keep learning about stuff. It's tough because the continuing ed dollars will disappear out of your hands because, it's fun to learn. All right, so Trager. There was a guy named Milton Trager, and he was born like in 1908 or something like that. He passed away in the 1990s. He was just kind of a unique guy. Grew up in Chicago, ended up in Florida. He got into boxing, and he would get rub downs from his trainer. It's kind of part of the boxing thing. One day his trainer didn't feel so good, and so he said, well, I'll give you a massage if you want. So he did. And then the trainer said to him, like, kid, I don't know what you're doing, but you should do that, whatever that is. And that kind of set this guy on his path. And he worked on people with post-polio syndrome. This is in the 40s. And that's what was interesting to him, were bodies where people couldn't let go. Not just because they were stressed out, but because their nervous systems were stuck in a certain way. So Trager is his last name, and he just developed this way of working with people. It's a little hard to communicate because it looks pretty simple, but you can do it for 40 years and still get better at it. And basically it's a way to communicate with somebody's nervous system through these kind of lulling, rocking, repetitive motions to kind of remind a person about a level of body integration that they've forgotten about. And they've forgotten about it either because they're stuck in pain or they're stuck in a different pattern. So he found that if you just if you stay underneath people's rigidity, you don't fight their rigidity, but you just come underneath it and see if you can meet them in a place where it feels okay. That's what you do. And then you just grow from there with these slow things and this feeling of permission and connection and acceptance and pleasure, and you just slowly walk together out of this world of restriction. So in a way, I could be describing 8 million different things, and this is just one way to do it. I got exposed to it in massage school, just kind of like you guys, and it was towards the end of the year. And a Trager practitioner came in, and she brought 4 or 5 other Trager practitioners. And they marched in and they set up massage tables and just started throwing people on the tables and doing Trager on them. And although you really have to feel Trager to kind of get it, just watching it, it was like, whoa, like I could do this. This is what I could do. And so, I got interested. I took a class, and eventually I just decided I wanted to do it as a big part of my practice. Partly because it's effective and partly because it's really fun. And it's just it's a really fulfilling, it's very fulfilling because it's a slightly different model than most of massage. Because most of massage is about doing stuff to people and doing stuff for people, which I'm into. But Trager is a different thing. It's not doing something to people, it's helping people reconnect to an experience that they already have. So maybe that'll make more sense, I don't know. It's hard to talk about it, but it's just a different thing. I'm not here to do, I'm here to connect and help bring out the innate wisdom within the person's system and then invite it to express itself in a safe way. And it's not really airy-fairy, although it sounds that way. It's really physiologic. And Milton Trager's ideas have since been borne out in research on neuroplasticity and how the brain changes and how we learn. And the main ways that we learn as human beings are we have motivation to learn, we have an opportunity to practice, and we have an environment that can nourish our curiosity. Those are the three things, and Trager is really built on that. If a person is having trouble, you give them experiences and then you repeat them, and then you do it in a way that invites curiosity rather than imposing even good things. Here's your present. It's not, you're just not imposing anything. So, it's hard to talk about because it's just blah, 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 blah. But that's what it is. Trager can work really well for clinical disorders. It works really well for chronic pain. Its best use, in my opinion, is for people who have holding patterns that go beyond the initial pathology. People might have had a surgery 20 years ago and never quite found their way back. So it's kind of like running old software. You're running the software from the injury, even though it's 5 years later, because the body just never quite figured out how to get back to its normal functioning. And Trager can help dissolve those patterns and reestablish good patterns if that's what's going to be healthy for the human being. If the bracing doesn't need to continue, I don't think there's anything better than Trager for helping to dissolve bracing patterns that have become habitual. So, and it can be a spiritual thing for people that are inclined that way. You're just with someone in a way that feels very nurturing and loving. And it can be very clinical for those who are thinking they want to help with certain maladies. And it's really fun. It involves rocking. And the rocking, everybody can rock, and everybody who does massage rocks people naturally. Trager just kind of takes it to a high art. And like I said, while it looks easy, people who've been doing Trager 30, 40 years will tell you that they're just learning new things all the time. It opens up before you. It's like anything does, right? Woodworking, anything, but Trager really does. It's an incredible way to be with people, along with everything else, which is as well. So one thing that I thought we could do is if somebody or more than one person wants to volunteer and you have some kind of holding patterns, I could just show you a little bit about how a Trager approach might look, and we can play with it, and then maybe you guys can play with it. And I'm open to other ideas too. Tara, do you want to add something to this?
I think for me personally, which you touched on as far as like the spiritual component, that was something that I felt with Trager right away. And I don't know if that's because I was ready for that, but it's definitely a big draw for me. And then I would say that my past history with traumas, what Trager has shown me is the little tiny incremental holding patterns that have been in my body that I just, with my motions and my body work or with yoga, I was flying right by, getting flexible and going right into big motions, but the smaller motions of what Trager's uncovered for me, of what's going on in my neck and my shoulders and my ribs, I wasn't aware of that at all. And so discovering those little tiny intricate holding spaces and finding freedom has been a really beautiful experience for me, of freedom that I didn't know that I had access to. Well, should we show them some of the work first on me, and then